I'm a little claustrophobic. I decided not to tax our friendship with what might happen to me.
Before Sigourney Weaver stepped on set and made cinematic history, the studio said no one would see a woman battle monsters. The franchise that catapulted her to stardom, however, she left after just 4 films. She has finally come clean at the age of 75 about the disastrous clones, the FBI threats, and the sinister secret that caused her to reject down millions of dollars in return. Born Susan Alexandra Weaver on October 8, 1949, Sigourney Weaver is an actress. The name of her family was well known. Her famous father, Pat Weaver, revolutionized television with the creation of The Tonight Show and The Today Show. Elizabeth English, who appeared in 1935's The 39 Steps, was her mother. She quit acting to focus on raising her family. The first host of The Tonight Show, Steve Allen, was Sigourney's godfather, and her uncle, comedian Doodles Weaver, was another renowned relative. Sigourney still felt out of place, despite everything. It was easy for her to feel neglected because her parents were so preoccupied with their work. She compared herself to a lonely small girl in a vast mansion at one point. The prosperity of her family wasn't something she could count on. Despite her interest in acting, she decided to major in English literature at Stanford University. She and her partner led an unconventional college lifestyle, playing flute and dressing as elves for fun. They lived in a treehouse. Even though she dabbled in acting in school productions like A Streetcar Named Desire, she never considered herself an actress. After finishing college, she went to Israel to farm. That changed everything. She chose to apply to Yale School of Drama after realizing how much she missed stories. Life at Yale was challenging. It was demeaning for someone in their early 20s like Sigourney to be cast in supporting roles alongside Meryl Streep, who seemed to constantly land the greatest parts. No professor had faith in her. One even said, "You have no talent. You should leave." Rather than give up, she was resolute in her mission to show them they were mistaken. Prior to that, though, she underwent a significant life event at the age of 14. She changed her name. Sigourney was a name she liked better after seeing it in The Great Gatsby. At 5 feet 11 inches, Susan felt out of place in 6th grade when she was teased for being too tall and called the giant spider. Changing her name gave her confidence and helped her break into the acting industry, where her unusual name was an asset. Some casting directors mistook her for a man and were surprised to see her, which led to her casting. At Yale, things began to turn around when she met Christopher Durang, another awkward outsider. The two of them began to collaborate on weird experimental plays, such as Titanic, 1976, in which she played a woman who kept live animals inside her body. The piece was bizarre, but it demonstrated that she could mix weirdness and emotion simultaneously. Then they made Dos Lusitania Song Spiel, a wild play that satirized war and capitalism, in which Sigourney played a sex worker who smashed champagne bottles while singing about money. Critics thought it was insane, but it caught the attention of Warren Beatty, who dubbed it punk theater. When she had to do her final performance at Yale, instead of a serious monologue, she did a piece about a woman seducing a refrigerator. The professors failed her, but Durang secretly gave the script to some agents, and that led to her first off-Broadway role. Before Alien, she was part of New York's weird theater scene. She and Durang kept working together, pushing the limits of what people expected from plays. In Dos Lusitania Song Spiel, they added a hedgehog puppet that symbolized capitalism, a version of Romeo and Juliet where the lovers shouted Marxist slogans, and a scene where Sigourney dressed as the Titanic and sank while singing. Most critics hated it, but it became a cult hit. That's when Mike Nichols, a famous director, saw her and later cast her in a Broadway play. Annie Hall, 1977, was her first film role, and it wasn't exactly a highlight. She had no lines and stood in a trench coat alongside Woody Allen and Diane Keaton for all of 6 seconds. Looking back, she joked, "I made $50 and spent it on a sandwich." It was embarrassing, but it worked for her. Casting director Juliet Taylor remembered her and suggested she play Alien, and her performance was even more surprising because no one expected the girl from Annie Hall to fight a monster. Fans began playing a game called Where's Sigourney?, attempting to locate her in Annie Hall. It was amusing. Her initial breakthrough in film was only being in the background. However, shortly she was set to emerge as one of the most prominent figures in science fiction history, no longer relegated to the background. Sigourney Weaver's role in Alien changed sci-fi forever, but it almost didn't happen. The original script in 1976 didn't specify the character's gender, but early drafts used male pronouns. No one expected the lead to be a woman. When director Ridley Scott and 20th Century Fox president Alan Ladd Jr. decided to make Ripley female, it was a huge risk. At just 29, Weaver was an unknown actress. She wasn't even the first choice. Meryl Streep and Glenn Close were considered. But Weaver got the role. She played Ripley in a way no one had seen before. She wasn't weak, she wasn't waiting to be saved. She was smart, tough, and knew how to survive. But Hollywood didn't respect that. She was only paid $35,000, while co-star John Hurt made $250,000. Fox didn't even want her at first. They thought a female action hero wouldn't work. Scott had to prove them wrong by making her train with ex-Marines, so she looked strong and confident handling machinery. The risk paid off. Audiences were shocked when the male captain, played by Tom Skerritt, died first. Ripley wasn't just a side character. She was the last one standing. Sigourney Weaver's Oscar nomination for Aliens in 1987 was something no one expected. Back then, Hollywood didn't take sci-fi seriously. The Academy mostly gave awards to emotional dramas or romance films, not action-packed movies with aliens and explosions. But Weaver's performance as Ellen Ripley was too powerful to ignore. She wasn't like the other nominees that year, who played women dealing with heartbreak or personal struggles. Ripley was different. She was strong, smart, and fearless. She led soldiers into battle, fought off terrifying creatures, and protected a little girl. She showed strength and emotion at the same time, something rare in action movies. In the end, Weaver didn't win the Oscar. It went to Marlee Matlin for Children of a Lesser God, making history as the first deaf actor to win. Many believed Weaver had been robbed because the Academy still didn't respect science fiction. But her nomination alone changed things. Years later, when Sandra Bullock won an Oscar for Gravity, people saw it as proof that Weaver had helped open the door for women in action films. 2 years later, in 1989, Weaver did something no one had ever done before. She won 2 Golden Globes in one night, one for Gorillas in the Mist, where she played real-life scientist Deanne Fossey, and one for Working Girl, where she played a ruthless boss. No actor had ever won 2 acting awards in the same night before, and no one has done it since. These 2 roles showed just how talented she was. In Gorillas in the Mist, she completely transformed into Fossey, a woman who dedicated her life to protecting gorillas. Weaver spent months studying Fossey's behavior, even living among real gorillas. The experience was tough. She got sick with dysentery while filming in Rwanda and refused to use a stunt double for dangerous scenes. In Working Girl, she played the complete opposite, a manipulative, arrogant executive who stole credit from her assistant. She made the character so believable that people in Hollywood said she must have been channeling every horrible boss they had ever met. Winning those 2 awards in one night proved she could do anything. But Weaver just laughed about it later, saying, "I think the voters got confused and checked my name twice." Despite her success, she refused to be typecast and instead pursued roles that challenged her in new ways. For example, she won a BAFTA for her portrayal of a quiet, unhappy housewife in The Ice Storm and starred in Death and the Maiden as a woman confronting her former torturer, a role so intense that the director referred to it as emotional surgery. Even when she wasn't on screen, she made an impression. She voiced Wall, demonstrating that she could captivate audiences without even being seen. But sci-fi always pulled her back. She returned for Alien 3, but only on her terms. She demanded that Ripley's story be meaningful, not just another sequel filled with mindless action. She wanted her character's death to have purpose. Still, Sigourney Weaver's time on Alien 3 was nothing but a nightmare. The original idea for the movie was completely different from what ended up on screen. At first, the story took place on a wooden monastery planet where a group of monks lived in isolation. They believed Ripley was some kind of divine test, and when the xenomorph appeared, they thought it was their punishment for sin. This version, written by Vincent Ward, was green-lit by Fox in 1990. It was filled with eerie religious imagery, hand-carved wooden corridors, candlelit rituals, a slow-burning horror that mixed faith with fear. But just 3 weeks before filming, the studio scrapped the entire thing. The script was thrown out, the sets were halfway built, and now the movie had no story. Fox panicked because test audiences hated the idea that the little girl from Aliens was killed off-screen. So at the last minute, they switched everything to a prison planet setting. Instead, this wasted millions of dollars and the whole production became a mess. In the end, none of that mattered. The film borrowed elements from a Prison Break script written by Walter Hill, but the spiritual, eerie elements came from Weaver's Near Dark and Eric Red, and David Fincher, who was only 28 years old and had never directed a feature film before. His previous work had been music videos. From the beginning, the studio controlled everything Fincher did. Every morning he had to fight with executives to shoot the scenes his way. Studios repeatedly turned down Fincher's dark, unsettling style. In an effort to make Ripley's grief feel more real and painful, he wanted the opening credits to show her autopsy. Fox cut it because they thought it was too depressing. On set, some crew members made fun of him, and one producer even said, "You could piss against a wall for 2 hours and call it Alien 3. It'll still make $30 million. Fincher was so frustrated that he took a break from Hollywood. Upon his return, he refused to let studios control his films, and so Seven came to fruition according to his terms. Weaver had her share of problems. In Alien 3, Ripley underwent a complete transformation. She sported a shaved head, plain prison clothes, and appeared worn down from radiation exposure. To achieve this look, makeup artists applied prosthetic glue to her scalp, but it caused severe allergic reactions. She broke out in painful rashes, so they had to switch to medical-grade glue. Filming was still delayed, and even shaving her head became a contentious issue. Fincher wanted it realistic, but Fox wanted a wig because they thought audiences wouldn't find her attractive enough. Weaver refused, stating later, "Ripley wasn't there to be desirable. She was there to survive." Fox was not happy about this, so they removed her co-producer credit from early trailers and even promoted the film with the tagline, "It's back," Weaver screamed, her anger evident in her accusations of cheapness and insult. She had fought for a voice in the film, and after Aliens she felt powerful enough to demand script approval. When the studio killed off Newt and Hicks, she insisted that Ripley had to die too. Otherwise, the whole thing would have been pointless. However, the constant rewrites took their toll on her. She later admitted that the whole ordeal left her feeling drained and defeated. This experience also revealed how Hollywood treated women. Male executives called her hysterical for having creative input, and crew members didn't like taking orders from a woman. Weaver considered leaving acting altogether, but she continued to defend Fincher, believing that the film was buried under studio interference, even though she could see the merit in what Fincher was. Fincher himself wanted nothing to do with the movie after it came out. He called it a nightmare and said, "No one hates it more than me." When Fox released a longer cut of the film in 2003, restoring 30 minutes of deleted footage, he refused to be involved. The scene he hated most was Ripley's death. Originally, she was supposed to sacrifice herself by jumping into molten lead, but at the last second, Fox forced a change, making the xenomorph burst from her chest as she fell. Fincher thought it was stupid and unnecessary, a way to copy Terminator 2's famous ending. Weaver, on the other hand, still has mixed feelings. She knows the movie is flawed, but she also thinks it was bold. She respects Fincher for not making it safe. Killing Newt was a huge risk, but she felt it made Ripley's grief. Sigourney Weaver returned in Alien Resurrection, 1997. But this time, she wasn't the same Ripley. She played a clone, Ripley 8, who wasn't fully human anymore. Scientists had mixed her DNA with that of the xenomorphs, giving her strange powers. She was stronger, faster, and had acid for blood. She could even sense the aliens, almost as if she were one of them. Weaver wanted to show this in the way she moved. She didn't just walk, she stalked, crouched, and stared through people like a predator. In one scene, she even growled, "I'm the monster's mother." But Ripley 8 wasn't just dangerous. She was also lost in one of the film's most disturbing moments. She found a lab filled with failed clones of herself, twisted, deformed, suffering. One of them begged her to kill it. The picture was panned by critics for being too strange, but Weaver stood by it, explaining that Ripley had evolved. This was a novel portrayal of her, and I wanted to explore that. One of the most famous moments in the movie wasn't even planned to happen the way it did. There was a scene where Ripley had to throw a basketball over her shoulder without looking and make the shot. The director wanted to fake it with CGI, but Weaver refused. She spent weeks practicing and training with an NBA coach. On the day of filming, the crew expected to be there all day trying to get the perfect take, but then on the very first try, she made it. Everyone on set was stunned. Ron Perlman, who was in the scene, completely broke character and shouted, "Holy!" They had to cut the scene quickly because his reaction wasn't in the script. People still talk about it, calling it one of the greatest flukes in movie history. Even Weaver joked, "I could have won a halftime show in a movie full of CGI effects." This one reality moment stuck out. Upon its initial release, the film was heavily panned, but as time went on, audiences began to appreciate its surreal elements, such as a human xenomorph hybrid with large, unsettling eyes, a scientist who treated the aliens like pets, and Weaver, who wholeheartedly embraced the film's lunacy, delivering lines like, Who do I have to get off this boat?" And in one scene, she even licked blood off Winona Ryder's face. She later said she liked the weirdness of it all. The director had a strange vision, and she respected that. Some scenes actually worked well, like the underwater chase where xenomorphs hunted the crew through flooded hallways. It was terrifying and intense. But then there were scenes that just didn't work, like the one where the hybrid alien gets sucked out into space through a tiny hole. Critics called it one of the worst CGI moments ever. Weaver admitted the movie had problems, but she didn't regret doing it. "It's not alien, but it's something," she said. After that, Weaver made sure Ripley's story wouldn't be turned into a cheap action franchise. That's why she completely refused to be an Alien vs. Predator, 2004. She thought the idea was ridiculous. "It's like making Jaws fight Godzilla," she said. She had already asked for Ripley to be killed off in Alien 3 because she didn't want the character to be brought back just for money. When Fox decided to make AP, she was furious. She felt like they were destroying Ripley's sacrifice just to make a quick, brainless action movie. She even blamed AP for ruining Ridley Scott's plans for a proper third Alien film. Over the years, she never changed her mind. She wanted Ripley to be remembered as a true sci-fi hero, not just another action figure in a franchise. Despite her departure from the film industry, Weaver managed to bring Ripley back to life through video games. In Alien Isolation 2014, a game about Amanda, Ripley's daughter, she voiced Ripley once again. The developers of the game asked her to record dialogue for a special mission where players could experience scenes from the original Alien. To make it feel more authentic, she reunited with the original cast. Unlike the sequels, this game focused on fear and survival rather than action. Weaver adored this change. "This is the sequel Alien 3 should have been," she said. Fans were surprised that she agreed to do it, considering she had turned down so many Alien projects. However, for her, this was different. Games allowed Ripley to exist without Hollywood's baggage. At 61, Sigourney Weaver did something crazy. She played a 14-year-old Na'vi girl in Avatar: The Way of Water. No AI, no tricks, just her acting. James Cameron wanted her to move like a real teenager. She ran, climbed, and even made herself act awkward to prepare. She read her old teenage diaries and worked with coaches to bring back that energy. For 13 years, no one knew who Kiri's father was. Some thought he was a human, others thought he was a Na'vi warrior. Some even believed Pandora's goddess Ewa played a part. Weaver added her own touch. She made up Kiri's connection with nature. One scene where Kiri bonds with underwater creatures wasn't in the script, but Cameron loved it. At first, people laughed at the idea of a 61-year-old playing a teen, but she proved them wrong. Then she transformed into an unconventional villain in The Defenders, Alexandra Reed, who wasn't aiming to conquer the world, but rather to stay alive. Having survived for 500 years through organ theft, Weaver instructed the writers to give Alexandra a more subtle and intelligent power, rather than a magical one. Alexandra's most terrifying scene, in which she poisons someone's tea, is reminiscent of a Shakespearean play. Marvel wanted her to die later in the series, but Weaver insisted that she be killed off so soon. Later leaked emails showed Kevin Feige wished he had used her in Eternals. In 2013, she returned to Broadway after 20 years. She played a washed-up actress in Vanya and Sonia and Masha and Spike. The role was chaotic. One night, she tripped over a rug so hard she broke David Hyde Pierce's rib. She did all her own stunts, even when her costumes kept messing up. One time, she got stuck in a wig net on stage. People loved how wild she was. Once she went off script for 7 minutes, ranting about 1980s soap operas. The playwright added it to the show. The budget almost collapsed because she demanded real vodka on stage. Her craziest moment? She secretly performed a matinee while sick with COVID-19. Later, she said she just channeled Masha's madness and kept going. Galaxy Quest let Weaver make fun of her sci-fi legacy. She played Gwen DeMarco, a character who mocked the ridiculous roles women got in space movies. In one scene where Gwen complains about the ship's random death traps, it was entirely her idea. She got the idea after thinking about all the dumb plot holes in Alien 3. She also improvised a line when running from a rock monster, but it almost got the movie a R rating. Behind the scenes, the screenwriter fed her insults through an earpiece to make her as angry as Ripley. Her costume became a joke. She kept accidentally ripping her sleeves to mock how impractical sci-fi outfits were. The weirdest part? The "By Grab Thar's Hammer" chant came from an old SNL sketch about one of Weaver's failed Broadway plays in Ghostbusters: Afterlife. Weaver's 37-second cameo was more important than people realized. Her scene with Bill Murray wasn't just for fun. It hinted that Dana Barrett was secretly funding the Ghostbusters' return. Cut dialogue even revealed she helped rebuild Phoebe's proton pack during filming. She changed a line to hint that Dana might have psychic powers. She refused aging makeup, saying, "Dana survived Ghostbusters. She's earned her wrinkles." The original plan was for her to fight Zool, but Weaver refused, saying Dana should be the one person who stays calm in all the chaos. In a Hollywood rarity, Sigourney Weaver and Jim Simpson have been wed for 40 years. They met in 1983 at a theater festival where he was bartending. She was seeing someone else at the time, but invited him to a party. He stayed to help clean up, and that brief encounter led to their first date 3 months later. On October 1st, 1984, they were married, a leap of faith in her words. The couple welcomed a daughter, Charlotte, in 1990. Charlotte, also known as Char, is non-binary and a professor at Columbia University with a focus on artificial intelligence and digital storytelling. Weaver had a hard time juggling motherhood and her career while filming Avatar. Char mentioned that the college application process nearly killed her. Despite her fame, Weaver chose a peaceful life in New York, going on hikes and avoiding the drama of Hollywood. Even Weaver's daughter, Char, didn't seem to mind her fame. When asked about Alien, her daughter brushed it off, saying, "That goes in the little box of things I don't need to know." Weaver was 6 feet tall, so she joked about being taller than male actors and was often cast in roles that didn't suit her. Weaver has always spoken up about issues she cares about. She works with the American Heart Association to raise awareness about heart disease, reminding women it kills more people than all cancers combined. She also supports abortion rights. In Call Jane, 2022, she played a woman in an underground abortion network and said the film's message is more important than ever. She has also spent over 30 years fighting for gorilla conservation. After starring in Gorillas in the Mist, 1988, she led the Dian Fossey Gorilla Fund and has won awards for her work. She has taken bold stands even when unpopular. In 2025, climate activists interrupted her play The Tempest. The audience booed them, but Weaver supported them, saying their message fit the play's theme. Weaver hasn't been in the spotlight much for her salary dispute, but she did help pave the way for women in action films. Her portrayal of Ripley in Alien proved that women could lead big-budget films. Viola Davis once made the observation that white actresses like Weaver earn far more than black actresses, saying, "I get a tenth of what they do." Weaver earned $330,000 for Alien, but later in her career, particularly with Avatar, she earned much more. Davis has also been supportive of other women in Hollywood, lending her support to LGBTQ+ issues in Prayers for Bobby and helping actresses like Elizabeth and Call Jane. Beyond her Hollywood career, Weaver has spent years as a UN Goodwill Ambassador, raising awareness about plastic pollution, deforestation, climate change, addiction stigma, and refugee rights. During COVID-19, she even made her New York apartment into a meeting place for climate activists like Greta Thunberg. In 2015, she defied arrest by protesting the Keystone XL pipeline, declaring, "Silence is complicity." Activism is more than just words to Weaver. It defines her.